Hola y bienvenidos a El Acelerador de Equipos. Yo soy Diego Sánchez, tu anfitrión en este viaje a la mejora de tu equipo. En cada episodio exploraremos estrategias, compartiremos experiencias y descubriremos claves para llevar a tu equipo al alto rendimiento. Y bueno, vamos, porque esos equipos no se van a acelerar solos. ¡Comencemos! Welcome again to your podcast, The Team Accelerator, or El Acelerador de Equipos. Espera, no estás en el lugar equivocado. Sí, esto está pasando en inglés, porque mi invitada es muy especial y quiero tener esta conversación en su idioma. Si no hablas inglés, por favor, pues vete al siguiente episodio. Ahí te estoy compartiendo mis aprendizajes acerca de esta conversación. But if you are able to understand an English conversation, keep it here because this is going to be very, very interesting. I would like to talk about experiential learning because it's a technique that I use very, very often when I'm delivering trainings or when I'm working with teams. But I think we could do it better. So I ask a very, very, very interesting person. So my guest today is Michelle Cummings. She's founder of Training Wheels, outdoor speaker, and a true pioneer in experiential learning. She has helped thousands of facilitators and learners turn activities into real learning experiences. So I'm thrilled to have Michelle Cummings here. So welcome to El Acelerador de Equipos, or the Team Accelerator. And so, and to be very open to talk about this experiential learning thing.
Welcome, of course. Michelle. Thank you for having me.
I don't know. I'm kind of nervous. I'm kind of excited. It's like, I don't know if people can understand this, but it's like, I don't know, having a conversation with a rock star in
thank you.
this experiential learning environment. So that's why I'm kind of thrilled. But let's start, Michelle, and thank you again for having this conversation. But I would love to understand the basics of this. So I will start. If you can share with us what is experiential learning, and what does it look like inside the organizations? What's it?
Yeah, I mean, at its core, experiential education is really just kind of a philosophy of hands-on learning and why it works so well. That's what at the core of experiential learning is, when you're doing experiential activities with an organization, with a team, really the whole intent, or for you as a facilitator to think about, is why did you choose the activities that you did? And hopefully it's because you want to surface some sort of behavior. There's an intentionality behind why you've chosen the activity that you have, so that it can surface a specific behavior that then you want in your debrief. Then you want to talk about what happened, why did it happen, and then how does that reflect, or how does that happen back in the real world as well. And that right there is experiential learning. When you've got the whole cycle, you've got the experience, then you've got some time for self-discovery, and then debriefing, and then application, to where then they apply what they learned back to the real world. And that kind of cycle there is what, as an experiential facilitator, we should strive to do in all of the programs that we work with, and all the organizations that we are able to influence.
Okay, so I understand that in this training environment is to think or to plan an activity and use it in order to take something so people can apply to their own reality. That's it?
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on what age and stage of your team building facilitator, I usually try to, when people call our office and say, hey, we'd like you to come and do some team building with us, some experiential learning with our organization, I usually have some of my follow-up questions to that are usually around, what does team building mean to you? Because team building means something very different to everybody. And so I always tell them, I try to put team building, quote unquote, into three different categories. One of the first one is what I call team bonding. And that's where you're just really your participants are just getting to know one another better. The whole goal is just to have fun with one another and have a good time. It might be facilitated by a facilitator that has skills in experiential learning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be debriefed. That, in my mind, is what team bonding is. And there's value in team bonding. I just don't do a lot of team bonding. But team building is then that's the next category, if you will. And team building is facilitated by someone that has some knowledge and skills and abilities in experiential learning. And that's where there's a thoughtful sequence of what they want this group to accomplish together. That's kind of natural flow. It starts out with a little bit lighter and then it builds until to some of your more challenging team building exercises. And it's facilitated by someone that kind of understands debriefing and walks them through that what, so what, and now what philosophy. The intent of it does tie back to, workplace goals and how are we working together as a team. And then the third category I call team development. And so team development is where you've got an organization that has bought in to experiential learning, bought into continuous growth. And that's where the program you have multiple programs. You're likely working internally with their HR department or internally with their team lead to where the real goal of that one is maybe it's behavioral change or really working helping the company accomplish a big lofty goal or and the experiential learning and the activities that you do in team development are really ongoing and build and more skill development for the leaders rather than just focusing just on teams. We're now going to focus on like effective communication and how to have courageous conversations and really working on self-awareness as well as team dynamics at the same time.
Okay, I'm loving these three categories that you are thinking because I think that most times organizations or leaders they are thinking that all the three levels that you are defining are like the same, no? And
Right.
they want sometimes that you make as I don't know what kind of magic they are imagining.
Yes.
That you will having a session like in 4 or 5 hours, and you will change all the dynamics of the team.
Exactly. That's why when I do a discovery call, that's what I call them. That's where I'm like where I'm asking them questions. How many people and what's an in place? What's the goal of this? Why did you call us? Why do you want this? I ask them what team building looks like to them and what they really hope to have accomplished at the end of our session together. And because sometimes clients have really unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
of you to fix everything in 3 hours. And so that's when I bring up my team bonding, team building, and team development. And if they expect team development results, but they've only given me 3 hours, in my discovery call, I am sure to tell them that is not possible in 3 hours. If you give me, you know, 3 years or even 3 months, or, if you give me 3 hours every week for the next couple months, then we are absolutely going to accomplish that goal together. But if you have budget for one program for 3 hours, then we're going to scratch the surface of team building. I can still sequence out something to where it's relatable. It definitely relates back to the real world. They're gonna walk out feeling like a team and that they've accomplished something together. But we are not going to have behavioral change or an organizational change in 3 hours.
How does that three kind of programs looks in time measurement?
Mm,
The this team bonding, I think it's going to be a quicker activity, maybe 1 day program or something like that.
yeah.
But team building, I think it takes a lot more time, and team development lot more.
Yes,
How are you
correct.
ideal times the lots for that?
Ideally, if I'm going to do a team building program, team bonding, like that is really, I actually tell clients, I don't do team bonding. Team bonding is where, it's kind of like if you and your team go out to do bowling or to go out and
Yeah,
do
for
like
sure.
just, go out for a team dinner. Like there's absolute value in that, but that's not where my skill set lies. My skill set really lies in understanding what is it about your team that's working well that you want to continue doing, or what's not working well that you would like the team to work through something together. And I'm also quick to tell them, I'm not here to fix your team. I'm here to give your team opportunities for discovery. And I will present them with challenges. I will also be pretty targeted in some of my questions, not in a challenging way or in an aggressive way, but I will ask the hard questions of them so
Yeah.
that way then it kind of it surfaces the topics and behaviors that they really want to tackle. And some of the experiential activities that we use, um, I can surface a very specific behavior that they've told me, like we're terrible communicators. Nobody, we just don't communicate well with one another. So then it's like, well, give me an example of what that looks like. Are they just texting one another? Are they just emailing one another? And they're not actually talking face to face or even video calls or anything like that. So if I hear that, yes, that's what we're doing, I'm like, okay, great. Then I'll bring in a little bit of research and I'll bring some activities that are good, effective communication activities that surface that topic. And then in my debrief, then I'll even bring in a little bit of research that supports that, if you only do texting and email communication, you're actually only getting 7 to 10% of the message through because we lose so much of the message without having tone, body language, emotion. Like it's so hard to really understand what people are saying if we don't see them or if we don't at least have a phone call with them. I could at least probably judge tone a little bit, tone and emotion a little bit better if I'm on a phone call with them. But I'm still missing body language, and body language makes up 55% of a message. And so those are the types of things. I don't just do the activity for the sake of doing an activity. I do it to surface something really specific. And then I do my homework and I have my research ready to share with them something that's going to help build them as a leader so that they understand, oh, I need to make a behavior change. I need to do something different in order for my team to get better at this because it starts with me as a leader. And I don't care if you're not the boss, you're still a leader in your organization, even if you're just an individual contributor on a team, you're still a leader in that organization.
We usually, when we are in this kind of processes, I think we start with an activity where like playing a game only, and then we used to discover some behaviors that people have, and then we can go deep and deep and deep, like we're going in this conversation. But sometimes people doesn't understand. I feel that it can be some kind of difference for you working in the States and all over the
Mm,
world,
yeah,
that the working here in Mexico, because sometimes they think that experiential learning is just are just games.
right.
Sometimes I need to say to my client, well, if you just want to play, go bowling,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or I hire a magician. I don't know, something that
Yes.
will entertain people. What are the challenges that you're not facing right now, but you faced years ago in order to leaders to understand
Yeah.
what is experiential learning and what are the outcomes that we can get from it?
Yeah. I think part of helping your clients understand what you do is part of the messaging that you have on your website and just really explaining what it is that you do. Because if you don't want to be just seen as the person that does as the game guy or the game girl, because I've been called that for sure,
Yeah.
because what we do is fun. And we do, I mean, my goodness, we probably all have a koosh ball and a rubber chicken in our facilitator bag. And all of those things are different and fun. And part of it is experiential learning is different and is fun. It's not classroom-based learning and death by PowerPoint. It
Yeah.
is different and it is fun. And part of that aha is what differentiates experiential learning from the other type of learning that's out there. And then part of it comes in your messaging to tell people what we're going to do. I'm going to actually hear from you what it is that you want to accomplish together as a team. And then I'm going to thoughtfully sequence out the activities that we're going to do with you that are going to intentionally surface those topics so that then together you can work together through challenges that are then going to surface those topics. And then we're going to talk about what happened, why that's important, and how that relates back to the real world. And and so it's going to be fun, but it's intentional learning. It's play with purpose. And that's really what I think that the everyday team building facilitator should be the message that you share out with your clients. It's play, we're going to have fun, but it's play with really intentional purpose. And that's what's different. We're not just going to play games for the sake of playing games. We're not just going to be silly for the sake of being silly. We are going to actually kind of dig deep and do some really good work together to help you be more effective as a team when you get back into the workplace.
I think we in corporate or no, even in adult life, I think we are like fighting always and thinking that if it's fun, it's not good.
Yeah,
If it's
exactly. If it's not fun,
fun,
it's not
it's not
serious. So it's
useful. Yeah, it's
serious
not
fun.
serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that mindset is very difficult to fight with.
Well, it is, and I will also say that, there's a lot of bad team building out there. So a
A
lot of
lot.
people have had experiences that have gone really badly. So anytime a leader hears that they have to go do team building, they will sometimes roll their eyes and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's just such a waste of my time. I don't want to do this," because they've probably experienced some bad team building out there in the past. And then I think that anytime the Geico commercial, I don't know if you guys have Geico down there in Mexico, but like anytime somebody makes fun of your industry, they like took the trust fall and the little gecko,
Yeah.
like whatever, and they tried to do a trust fall with the little lizard, like whatever. Like I don't do trust falls anymore because it's that cliche,
Yeah,
activity
me
that
too.
honestly has probably done a lot of harm to our field because they were done poorly and somebody fell and whatnot. I feel like as team building facilitators, we're always battling the negative, ideology that people come
Mhm.
into or those attitudes that they come in with about team building. They'll cross their arms and give you the side eye a little bit. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So I feel like whatever your icebreakers are, however you start your program, that's going to be the tone of the program. So if you start out with something really ridiculous, you're going to reinforce the message that this is kind of dumb team building games. But if you start out the session saying, we're going to be really intentional. Everything I'm going to ask you to do today is intentional by design. I've thoughtfully sequenced out, activities and experiences for you to really hit your goals that you wanted to hit together as a team. So you've got to be really honest with your communication with your clients. I do a lot of pre-work with them as well, as far as like the intentional messaging I send either to the leader who's hired me or to, if I can have the email addresses of everybody that's going to be in the program, that's really helpful as well. Because now, if they have questions, they can ask me before they even get on site. What are we going to be doing? Why are we doing this? Is this going to be a waste of my time? Like sometimes they'll be real honest with you. So if you give some really good messaging around, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play, but it's going to be play with purpose, like whatever. You can feel free to use any of the language that you're hearing me use today in this interview, and use whatever you hear to put that into your messaging. It'll help you um, attract more of the type of clients that you want. And it will also help diffuse or help like weed out the ones that are just looking for team bonding. Because ideally, you want to get to team development because then it's consistent, reliable work. And you're going to see some market changes in those teams. And so are they. It's going to affect, and then you could start getting into like what's the return on your investment? What's the ROI of hiring us to come out and do repeated programs with you? If you can prove that like their attrition rate, like if they're retaining their people instead of people leaving the organization, we've had some organizations say every dime I spent or every peso I spent with your organization, I actually saved by retaining my people rather than having them leave and then go to a different organization. Because one of the biggest expenses organizations have is losing their talent and then having to rehire and retrain someone. The onboarding process is very expensive and it takes a lot of time and it impacts performance of the team and impacts our ability to actually accomplish goals if you have people just leaving all the time. So if you can get to team development and you can actually show this team is really working well together and you have influenced that, that right there is marketing gold for you.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about that, because I think that's one of the questions that pops up frequently, and about the benefits. About, can
Mhm.
you share an experience or two about how you saw that this kind of team development programs worked and what brought to the to your clients or the organizations?
Yeah, I mean, and through testimonials and through, just even just your evaluation forms, if you ask the right questions, then in your evaluations, like how did this personally impact you, and what are you going to do differently based on your experience here? If you get them forward thinking, then that also can help you because then they're thinking like, when would you want to do another program, and what would be the benefit of doing continuous ongoing development. So if I am doing team development work with an organization, I almost always bring in some sort of behavioral assessment. And that's something else that you as a facilitator can, if you get certified in a different type of behavioral assessment. So it could be Myers-Briggs, it could be StrengthsFinder, it could be DISC, it could be predictive index, any of those types of assessments. Those are something that those are all data driven, they're research based. Those are going to be things that for a true HR professional that's looking for a solution to help their teams work better together, as soon as you can bring in an assessment of some sort to where you actually, every single person gets that gift of self-awareness. That's what I call self-assessments of any kind.
Mhm.
It's the gift of self-awareness because some people lack they lack self-awareness around how their behaviors show up in the world and how they bounce off of others. Other people are very self-aware, and what I also like about those assessments is it helps you understand what your preferred behaviors are and also gives you the realization that your preferred behaviors are not the same as everybody else's. Just because I'm an extroverted person and I like to talk a lot does not mean
Mhm.
that everybody on my team is. And
Yeah.
so if I'm their leader, I need to make sure that I'm providing opportunities for them to use their voice. Because if I'm the one doing all the talking, I'm the one doing most of the learning. And so giving those quieter people on your team an opportunity to process, because they're process thinkers. They're not um, think as you talk. They talk before they think. And so like doing different exercises that surface that, getting them to see, here's one activity that I love to do that doesn't cost anything that you can just do it on your own. Put a line down the middle of the room, or if you're outside, just designate where your center line is. Have everybody on the team come and stand on that line. And then you read off two categories, like this one, I think before I talk, or I talk as I think. And so those two right there, and then tell them that the line has the value of 0. And from 0 out to the walls on either side goes from 0 to 1, 2, and then the walls would be 3 in degrees of how much you prefer that behavior. And then tell them to vote with their feet. And then first pick a side. Which side do you feel like most fits you? And then give it a degree from 0 to 1, 2, 3. If you like only talk as you think, you'd be at extreme 3 on that side. But if you're one like, no, I definitely listen and gather information and really think through a response before I give it, you might be an extreme 3 on the other side. So then once they've separated and they're all standing in their spot, I say, now turn and look and see where the people that you work the closest with and where have they placed themselves. And that it's such a great exercise in self-awareness around A, what are my behavior preferences? And then B, how do my behavior preferences differ from everybody else that's on my team? And so you could just come up with, I usually do like 8 to 10 different categories at a time each time I do that exercise. So and then after everyone has placed themselves, I'll just pick one person at random, say, okay, I see that you're around a 2-ish on that one. What places you there and how does that show up for you in your day to day? And then I pick someone on the other side. Okay, I see that you're a 3 on that one. Um, how, why did you place yourself there and how does that show up for you in your day to day or in a team meeting or something like that? And then hearing both perspectives is so good. And then I'll ask the question, now is yours right and theirs wrong? And they'll say, of course not. Well, but this right here is why sometimes that guy, whoever quote unquote that guy is, there's sometimes why that person absolutely you're like, ooh, I like that guy. There's something about him I really like. Well, it might be because he has a lot of the same behavior preferences that
Yeah.
you do. And then if that on the other side, you're like, well, that guy drives me crazy. Like, well, maybe it's because he has different behavior preferences than you do. And it doesn't mean yours are right and his are wrong. It just means they're very different. And we've got to respect both because you need both to have an effective team. So so that's one of my favorites. That is just a really good one. And you come up with whatever your other 8 topics are. You know, are you someone that you express your frustrations when you have them, or do you keep your frustrations to yourself? Are you a careful planner, or are you more spontaneous? Do you like fast-paced environments or do you like slower-paced environments? Do you like working with people or do you like working with data and information? So just find whatever your opposites are
Yeah, for
and then
sure.
surface it through this exercise. That is a great way to do an experiential behavioral assessment. And so sometimes I do this one before then I present if I do DISC or if I do Strengths Finders or any of the other assessment tools that are actually an assessment tool from
Yeah.
from another organization, then I'll do this one first as the experiential activity that surfaces it. Now they've felt it in their bones and we've had a good conversation about it. Now I can actually present them with with the assessment tool, and now we can do a little bit more personal reflection and learning.
I'm loving this example that you are giving because it goes out of what some people think is experiential learning. They are
Mm,
like tossing a ball or running from one place to another. I think this is very focused and also is something that no is not only for trainers or
mm.
for team building experiences. I know you have a leadership program also,
Yes.
and I don't know, and I think that you are also teaching leaders how to use this kind of experiences or techniques, actually experiential learning in their own processes internally.
Yeah.
How can a leader apply these tools of experiential learning in their own teams without making an event or going to team building? How can they apply it in reality?
Yeah, that's a great question. The kind of the difference so I do own 2 companies. Training Wheels is the one that you probably have known me through. That's where we have over 500 different team building activities that people can purchase or learn. And so and then Personify Leadership is my leadership development course that I created. And so the difference between the two is Training Wheels is like, here's so many experiential activities. Um, Source your own props, or you could purchase props from us. You could purchase books. I've authored multiple books in the team building field. We also do a lot of facilitation training. If you want to learn how to be an experiential facilitator, we have a experiential facilitation 101 class that people can take. And at Training Wheels, it's like, here are all the activities. You can build out your own curriculum. You can build out your own programs. Just you can learn and learn and learn. You could be a lifelong learner of the experiential activities. And then you can implement them into your own programs. At Personify, what's different is that Personify is actually a curriculum. It is a leadership course that you say this in this order, and at the end of, and there's targeted outcomes for actual leadership development that comes out of that program. And really, why I decided to do Personify, why I started that is that I did find that there's a lot of team building facilitators that aren't naturally gifted at being able to do that proper sequencing where you start with an icebreaker and then you pick your next activity and then you pick your next activity and they just don't have the gut instinct to know how to really do that well to get to the leadership development outcome that a lot of organizations are wanting. And so Personify is also, it's not just all activities. It's activities that there's 8 modules in that course, and I only have one experiential activity in each one of the modules. And so I engineered them very specifically, the activities, to surface that behavior very specifically that I want to then go and teach some knowledge, skills, and abilities in that particular competency. So I use the metaphor of the body in that program. So like in the heart of a leader, that's where we start with that program. We start with the heart. And, in that module, we talk about how do I lead with intention? How do I build trust and respect amongst those that I lead? And so we have one activity that we surface that really does bring out what it feels like when people are not working well together, when they're stealing balls and props and things like that from one another. Because what surfaces out of that is that I'm looking out for number one. I'm looking out for myself and I'm looking out for my team, not everybody, not anybody else. So then we take that topic and then we go into the classroom and then we say, okay, well, what just happened? That's kind of a natural phenomenon. Like, as humans, there's this law of nature called the law of reciprocity, meaning reciprocal behavior. I will reciprocate whatever behavior you demonstrate towards me. As a human, I will naturally demonstrate that same behavior back to you. So if you play nice with me, I will naturally play nice back with you until something happens where you say something or do something that offends me or I don't like. And then all of a sudden, it's going to change the way I work with you. If you do something that really makes me mad or doesn't feel good, or you took something from my department and it negatively impacted me, then it's probably going to have some sort of influence on the way I work. I have now choose to work with you. And so then we talk about how do we regain trust when trust has been lost? And then how do we if that does happen, someone says something or does something that doesn't feel well, what do I need to do as an accountable leader to then make sure that I go and fix that and have that courageous conversation? Hey, you know what? That didn't feel good, but that happened. Can we like talk about that a little bit? Was there something that I did or said that actually made you that contributed to that problem in some way, shape, or form? Or was this just were you having an off day, or something like that? Because I mean, we're allowed to have bad days, right? So we all have personal lives, things going on at home as well. So personify, that just scratches the surface of one skill that we teach in that class. And it's a 2-day course. It's 16 hours in length. And we really do when they walk away from there, there's 3 different skills that we teach them in each one of the modules. So when they walk out, they really do feel like they've got a great toolkit of here's what I need to do in order to be an effective leader back in my organization. Did I answer your question? I know I got really long-winded there.
No, don't worry. I'm thinking in a lot of things that you said, because I understand that leaders sometimes can take the role of facilitator. No, it's
Mm,
like watching the behaviors and behaviors, predict behaviors,
yeah.
and then like making this kind of internal debrief in order to gather some not just information but learning and takeaways for themselves, for people who are in their own teams. I think,
Yeah.
like it's not just like Experiential learning is not about having games. It's like living an experience and take something away from it.
Right, exactly. The reflection piece is what's really important is like,
Yeah,
yeah, otherwise it is just the fun, energetic games and things like that. And again, I'd put that in the team bonding bucket, like it would, that's team bonding. If we're just going to play a game, then that's team bonding. But if there's something that we can reflect on and take away from that particular activity, that's where it moves into team building.
yeah, for sure. And you can do team building even, and I'm thinking this, even if it's not an event, especially
Yes.
designed for it, as if you live an experience and you debrief it, you can have some learning and apply it to improve what you are doing and the way you're working. Yeah, I know you use the Watts as a debriefing tool.
Mm.
Um, can you explain what the Watts are and
Yeah.
how you think you can some leader can apply it, even if not if it's not in a team building session, but in their own reality?
Yeah, like the debriefing part, I think for a lot of facilitators, that's what's hard. Learning the games and actually facilitating a game with a group is the easy part. That's the fun
Yeah.
part. When it gets hard is when you now have to ask those really targeted questions to really draw the learning and draw that reflection piece out of your learners, out of teams. And so I have a 52-page handout on effective debriefing tools and techniques on my website. So if you're listening to this, you can go and sign up for our e-newsletter, and it will automatically send you several handouts that have game ideas and all in this 52-page debrief, handout on effective debriefing tools and techniques. So asking the right questions is actually it is a skill that needs to be developed, and so the first technique of processing that we all learn is you set your group down into a specific shape. What is it? Into a circle, right? It's our favorite shape as facilitators.
For sure.
And then you ask your group questions. And ideally, they're open-ended questions. So they're ones that they would have to be thoughtful about a response, not just offer a yes or a no. Like, did you use teamwork? Yes. Instead of asking that, we're like, how did you work together as a team? How did you use teamwork when you were accomplishing this particular activity or doing this together? So that's an open-ended question to where now they have to be thoughtful about their response, not just say yes or no. Um, and how did leadership show up? So it's more of the how questions and the whys rather than did you and things like that. Those are more of your closed questions versus your open. And then walking through that sequence of the what just happened, why did that happen, and how does this relate back to the real world? Those three kind of categories of questions is really what helps walk the learner through a very natural sequence. And when I go to debrief my very first exercise, whatever activity I chose to do, I always start and tell them if this is the first time they've ever been in one of my team building programs, I tell them after every activity I'm going to present to you, we're going to stop, we're going to pause, and we're going to reflect, and we're going to talk about what just happened. Why do you think that happened? And then how does this relate back to the real world? So that way you're actually teaching your participants a little bit about your process. And so it helps them anticipate what's coming next. So if you do, I'm sure a lot of facilitators listening know the group juggle exercise where the participants, you
Yeah.
establish a sequence of where you take one ball and you toss one ball through a sequence where everybody receives it one time, and then the last person throws it out to you as the facilitator. That's called group juggle. And then you keep adding more items, like 3 items, and then maybe 6 items. And so you have all of this chaos of all these balls being thrown in the air, but you're always throwing to the same person and you're always receiving from the same person. So there's actually method to the madness. And even though it looks really chaotic, and so at the end of that, then you calculate, how did you think you did as a team on this? How many drops did we have? How do you think that affected our team mentality when we had a lot of mistakes? Were they fun or were we embarrassed by mistakes? How does that relate back to the real world? What might some of these things represent? Is if it's, a project we're working on and it's got a lot of high risk to it and a lot of high visibility in the organization. How do we make sure that we don't have bad handoffs and we don't drop the ball? Because then that's going to look poorly upon the team or the organization or our reputation or different things like that. So depending on what the topic is that they want to talk about, that's where group juggle is a great example. I can use it to talk about effective delegation. Were you paying attention to how you were delivering that product or that project to your team member, or were you just throwing it because you just wanted it out of your hand? Well, that's dumping instead of delegating, right? So, or if it's team process, I can talk about, did you get lost in the chaos of watching all of the items, or were you focused on your responsibility, who you were receiving from, who you were throwing to? Um, so like that's one activity that has been around for 30 or more years that is very simple, just requires some soft tossable objects. And you could make that be really just super light and fun, or you can get real serious with some of your questions and ask them to discover um, how is this what we experience right here? How does that relate back to the way we work together as a team back in the real world? So you can get to some really deeper conversations based on the questions that you ask them.
Yeah, the questions are everything. I think it can change all the whole experience. Sometimes they are like having a lot of fun, and you make the some question they go deep inside
Yeah,
the conversation. So I understand. So first we have to talk about facts, and then we have to talk about the group dynamics, and then in how we are going to apply it
apply it. Yep.
to our reality, right?
Yeah. Another tip that I like to give facilitators is that if you ask a question and you get no answer, like you get silence, like there's nothing more terrifying for a facilitator than to ask a question and then they don't say anything, right? Because then we start getting on our heads like, oh my gosh, they hate this, they hate me. Like, ugh, I need to rephrase the question. Like we get nervous, right?
Yeah.
So if that ever happens, sometimes it could just be that you have a heavy thinking group. But sometimes you just need to warm people up to talking. So if that happens to me, what I'll usually say, you know what, this is a great conversation for you to have with a partner. So just turn to someone standing near you and answer that question with a partner first, and then we'll bring it back to the large group. And then I'll ask for volunteers for a few people to just summarize the discussion you had with your partner. That is a great way to let everybody answer the question and not just one person talking while maybe 12 people are listening. But then also it helps you then to kind of avoid that silence a little bit, but also it's benefiting the participants because everybody's getting a chance to answer.
Yeah, that works very well with introverts,
Mm-hmm.
and we stop the extroverts to be the same two person that's it's loud and
Exactly.
all talking. Oh, I'm enjoying this conversation very much, but I think we have been talking for about 40 minutes.
Okay.
I think it's time to start wrapping up. And to start this wrapping up, I would love to ask you if someone has just, I don't know, like 30 seconds to listen to this podcast.
Mm.
How can you resume or or present the biggest takeaway you can share from this conversation, but only in these 30 seconds?
Okay. So, in 30 seconds, the biggest takeaway from this is for you to do a little self-evaluation of the type of programming you're doing, whether it's team bonding, team building, and team development. And once you've identified that, then ask yourself, which one would you rather be doing? Would you rather be doing team bonding, team building, or team development? And if whatever you think you're naturally doing now is not one of those three, what would you need to do differently in order to get to one of the other three?
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with that. It's like the root. It's like seeing what are you, why are you doing, what are you doing, what you're doing, right? It's like
Mhm.
what's behind, what's the objective, and then we can start designing something that will
Yeah.
be really useful for the group or for the leader of the group. So I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you very much. And as I told you, because I think you haven't listened any of the episodes I had because they are all in Spanish. I love to end all the episodes by challenging everyone who is listening to do something that they can apply in order to become a better leader, become a better facilitator, become a better person. So
Yeah.
I would love if you can help me to define what's the challenge of this episode.
Yeah, the challenge I think for the team building facilitator is to, if you were going to design a 3 hour program that really, with the outcome of it being more towards team development, where you really wanted people to have better self-awareness walking away with that, what would the activities be that you would sequence in a 3 hour program in order to really get to personal self-awareness for the people that are in your programs? That would be a good challenge, I think.
Okay, I think it's a big challenge. It's not an easy challenge, but that's why the challenge are challenges. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. I think it's going to be a very good exercise. Let's see how is the sequence, and if you do it, if you do your homework, please share with us in our social media.
There you
And
go.
by the way, Michelle. How can people know more about you, about training wheels, and what's the best way to be in touch with you and know what you're
Yeah.
doing?
So my email address for Training Wheels is just Michelle, Michelle, at training-wheels.com. Don't forget the dash, you get a very different
Yeah,
website.
yeah,
Okay.
that's just
And then if
important.
you want to learn more about Personify, that my email address there is M Cummings. My last name is Cummings. So it's the letter M for Michelle, and then Cummings at personifyleadership.com. And both companies, I have a free newsletter that goes out. Training Wheels goes out every Wednesday, and I give tips and tricks on how to be a better facilitator. And at Personify, it goes out once, maybe twice a month, and that one focuses more on leadership development skills for yourself. So either one it would be great to connect with you on either one. I also do have a podcast and
Oh,
as well, so
nice.
you can find me on the podcasting. So my podcast at Training Wheels is called Ask Michelle and Chris About Team Building. And I co-host that with Chris Cavert, who's another author in the
That's
field.
awesome.
And then my podcast at Personify is called Leadership Personified. And I interview leaders that have been through our program and get them to share stories of success about their own leadership journey.
Okay, so now you have it. You know you can have Michelle in your inbox once or twice a week. Actually, we are recording this program on Wednesday, so I just received your newsletter and about the tossing objects and that kind of thing. So
That's
we
right.
are
Yep.
very aligned on on that. So if you want to know do you want to know more about these topics, please reach Michelle. She answers her email, so
I
it's
do
it's
answer my
very
own email. Yeah.
yeah yeah that's how I reach for her, and that's why we are having this awesome time and this awesome conversation. So I just have to say thank to you, Michelle. I really appreciate this information you're sharing, or your knowledge, and all your openness that you have always shown, and how you share everything you know, with everything
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invitation. I've enjoyed this a lot.
so thank you. Thanks everyone who is also, I don't know if they're listening or they are watching this, but thank you for giving us some this part of your time and your life. So thank you very much, and see you, listen to you in the next episode of the Team Accelerator podcast, El Acelerador de Equipos. Y así cerramos este episodio de El Acelerador de Equipos. ¿Quieres más aceleración? No dudes en seguirme en Instagram como @DiegoSánchezTeam o en LinkedIn como Diego Sánchez Recendis para obtener contenido adicional y además mantenernos en contacto. Si te sirvió este episodio, compártelo por favor con líderes que busquen acelerar sus equipos al éxito.